The Damian Lillard saga has gone on, but finally there's a plethora of news, smoke everywhere. What's real, what's not, what's going to happen? We'll break it all down on Locked On NBA.
You are Locked On NBA, your daily NBA podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On NBA, your daily source for all things NBA from the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for joining us and making us part of your week. Appreciate you guys checking us out on whatever platform you've chosen. You can catch a video version of the show. Just go to youtube.com/LockedOnNBA and give us the old like and subscribe. Make sure to give us those 5-star reviews as well. On today's show, we'll talk about Damian Lillard because there's lots of news to get to. Not hard news, soft news, smoky news, shady news, whatever you want to call the opposite of actual hard news. But there is stuff to talk about. We'll break it all down on today's show. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. My name is Matt Moore. I'm the senior NBA writer for the Action Network, co-host of Locked On Nuggets. His name is David Ramil. He's co-host of Locked On Heat, and he's about to have himself a busy couple of weeks here. Last week, we told you on this show, I said a number of teams have kicked the tires on Damian Lillard, including amongst those things was the Toronto Raptors. Things kind of simmered down after that, and then Thursday night, things started to go haywire, and there's all sorts of things that you can kind of interpret as far as how these things are going to go. There's discussions about a potential 4-way deal that involves DeAndre Ayton from the Suns going to the Blazers. There is a confidence in league circles that no matter what happens, that's more likely to happen than not. There's a lot of discussion about the possibility of Tyler Hero being dealt to the Utah Jazz, either as part of the Damian Lillard trade or as part of a separate trade in the eventuality that they were to acquire Damian Lillard and not have to include Hero in that. I'm not sure why they would trade Hero if they don't have to, but that's what the rumor mill is. And then there's today. And I started hearing stuff about Toronto on Thursday. It carried through on the weekend. Then today, Mark Spears at ESPN reported the same that there are some league executives that feel that the Toronto Raptors are, quote, front runners for Damian Lillard in the Damian Lillard pursuit. My read on this, David, and through all of this is that Miami continues to talk multi-team deals with teams like Indiana, Brooklyn, Utah, and Phoenix to try and put together enough assets for Portland to finally be like, okay, in the hope and hoping simultaneously that nobody else surpasses it. The Blazers keep engaging teams like Toronto, and we'll get to some of the other ones, which are kind of new, in the hopes of getting a better deal than what Miami has to offer, and the added bonus of, not dealing with the Miami Heat, because they're pretty mad about this whole thing, as I think most people would be. And so there's this whole kind of like two-way street going on between Miami trying to put together deals and then Portland trying to put together deals. And I will say, I also think that Portland is also taking teams that Miami has talked to and then being like, hey, do you want to get on this other deal with us? And my Phoenix is like, sure, why not? So that, I think, is where we stand. What is your kind of reaction to what you've heard between Thursday, or even really since last Monday when we did the show, and now?
Yeah, no, I think it's pretty similar. I think that's the understanding is, look, Portland is not interested point blank in what Miami has to offer. That's been the clear case since Dame's initial trade request. The two teams talked at some point during Summer League. They haven't engaged since then. At least that's what other source reporters have said. And that being clear, I think you're exactly right. Miami's pursuit of Dame right now, I don't think it's necessarily as lukewarm as others have stated it, that they're not being aggressive in the pursuit of Dame. There's nothing they can do. They can't change the stink on Jaime Jaquez Jr. and Nikola Jovic and say, no, this is exactly the kind of trade asset that you're looking for. So what else can they possibly do but try to involve other teams so that eventually they can put together something in totality that is worth for Portland trading Damian Lillard to Miami. And that's the only recourse allowed to them. So it's their hope that they can put together something with other teams. Portland accepts that deal and is willing to trade that, and that Toronto or somebody else doesn't wind up coming in underneath and saying, guess what? We changed our mind. We will throw in Scotty Barnes. We will throw in OG Anunoby. So we'll see what happens. But I think that's basically where the two teams are right now in terms of Portland and Miami and whatever perceived standoff they might be. There's no reason for Portland to engage Miami, just as there's nothing that Miami can do to change Joe Cronin's mind.
I will say this, that I think, like, look, I have a lot of faith in Miami. I think the Heat are handling this very well on their end. Local media with present company excluded. I think Locked On Heat's done a great job of covering this whole thing in a pretty fair and balanced way. Local media has gone a little bit off the rails in Miami. Well, no, that's not fair. They haven't gone off the rails. They've gone off the rails into the sea, into the center of the earth, and to the magma core of the planet. But regardless, I do think that in general, Miami's done a good job of just being like, we're not going to bet against ourselves. We're going to continue to do this. Like, you're going to keep having to come back to us. I don't think that they're working in collusion with Dame's representation, but like Dame's representation is obviously pretty desperate at this point, given the circumstances of what's gone on. Like, you don't threaten. They got fined once for saying that he would only go to one team, and then they went back and did it again, knowing that it was unlikely they would get fined again for it. I still continue to wonder about what this actually looks like. That if Damian Lillard does, like, if the Raptors are like, yeah, we're doing the deal. No one I've talked to in the league that knows Damian Lillard is that like, oh no, yeah, he'll cause mayhem. He's gonna spit on Tim Hortons, and he's gonna double park, and he's gonna he's gonna sing the wrong words to Canada, and like, he's gonna talk about how bad poutine is for you health wise. That's not gonna happen. Like, he's gonna show up and he's gonna play. At the same time, my understanding is that like the Raptors thing has like come and gone like 4 times. With they keep being like, okay, so like we got some traction here, and then the Raptors are like, no, we can't. No, it's not gonna work. And then like 2 days goes by, and then they call back like, well, and so I mean, this is the thing that everybody ran into trying to trade for OG Anunoby. And I have another conspiracy theory for you, David. You want to hear my conspiracy?
Absolutely.
I think that they're test driving offers, not for Dame, but to see what the market value is on their players for Giannis Antetokounmpo or Joel Embiid. I think they're test driving offers. I do think that the Raptors are of the understanding that it is better to trade OG Anunoby at his current price on his current deal with his current market value than re-up and sign him to a big new contract that will be harder to move and that kind of locks you in. So they have a window here with him, but there are other pieces. The Giannis component of this, I think, is like weighing a little bit heavier over people than I think people realize. That like Giannis has made enough noise. If you're any of these star chasing teams, if you're Miami or New York or Los Angeles or any of these squads that have the capacity to be that kind of glamour market, and you were like thinking about making a big trade, you might hold off because you're like, well, I'd love to have Dame, but I'd love to have Giannis. And to me, I think that could be part of this equation too.
It's something I hadn't considered. And it's that kind of a far-reaching vision that certain GMs like Masai Ujiri have. And that's the kind of understanding is like, you know what? Maybe we can do something this year, but it's not necessarily going to raise their ceiling. People have argued this. I mean, Locked On Raptors host Sean Woodley has said it. It's like, it doesn't matter if they're necessarily a clear-cut contender or not. They're still going to be a much more improved team. But for a general manager and front office, that's not good enough. You don't want to just be building a good team. You don't want to sacrifice your best asset in Scotty Barnes or Anunoby in order to kind of just be a damn good team, not necessarily a championship contending team. You want to be able to lock yourself in with it as a title contender. So Giannis Antetokounmpo's acquisition certainly does that.
There are some other teams that are interested in Damian Lillard and are on the fringes and have done more than kick the tires. We'll talk about them, their chances of getting Damian Lillard, and what that means in the greater picture of the trade landscape. We'll do that on the other side on Locked On NBA. First, I need to tell you about FanDuel Sportsbook. Snap into action this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets, guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. I had bet yesterday the New Orleans Saints on the money line to win, and then they were up 17-0, and then Derek Carr got hurt. And the second that I saw Jameis Winston on the sidelines, I used one of those bonus bets from FanDuel, and I came back on the Green Bay Packers at 9-1. So managed to actually come out way ahead in that game using the bonus bets. $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app's easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. You can bet say the Miami Heat to win the NBA title if you think the Damian Lillard deal puts them over the top. So visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. We'll be right back on Locked On NBA. Back here on Locked On NBA, thanks for joining us. Matt Moore and David Ramil with you on a Tuesday. Make sure to check out tomorrow's show with Jake Madison and John Corrales. Also, if you're watching this live on YouTube, we hope that this show will stay up and that we don't have to re-record this after Damian Lillard is traded on Monday night. All right, so a couple other teams that are kind of interested in this. I'm gonna bounce these off of you. I was told by a few people that, and this Spears reported this as well on Monday. Like he was the first to report it. I want to give him the Hall of Famer, by the way, Mark Spears, the credit on that. But like, there's been kind of word that Milwaukee is a team that the other suitors are concerned about, that they feel like Milwaukee is trying to time this right to kind of slip in under cover of darkness and get a deal done. If you're wondering what the framework of that would look like, they kicked the tires on a few deals with Drew Holiday over the summer. They at least explored what that would take because they know that they have to improve. And if they didn't think that they needed to then, well, certainly Giannis's comments here in the late summer, early fall have indicated that even more strongly. The deal would probably involve Drew Holiday going to a third team and then those assets going to Portland. So if you kind of compare this, it basically looks like if whatever the Heat can get for Tyler Hero, the Bucks can probably, not definitely, but probably get better return for Drew Holiday, who's a better player. Even though Drew's older, this is probably his last contract, to be perfectly honest. Age and injuries and the money aside, Drew's still just a better player. And so theoretically, you could get more value on that. I don't know. I don't think there's any reason to believe they can't trade Chris Middleton or Brook Lopez. Those two guys aren't going anywhere because they can't be dealt because they just signed them new contracts, at least not until later this season. But I will ask you, if Dame got traded to Milwaukee, even though it's like very different from Miami in terms of the lifestyle, it does present him with an excellent chance of winning a title, which is what he wants. Do you feel like that's maybe something that should at least put a little bit of a scare into the Miami Heat organization?
Absolutely. I think they should be 100% concerned with that option. I think, look, there's only so much interest in playing with Bam Adebayo, and I don't think as strong a point as it's been for Dame and his representatives, I don't think it's the hill that he'll die on. Like, as you said, if he gets traded to Toronto or Boston or any other team, he's not going to sit out the season. He's not going to just pout and be like, I want to play with my friend Bam. It's great that they have a friendship. Friends can coexist and play on other teams. I saw that with Dwayne Wade and LeBron James. They were friends. They played together as teammates for 4 years. They went their separate ways. They still be friends. And I think that could happen with Dame Lillard and Bam Adebayo. Whatever friendship they may have, I don't think it's going to be the end-all, be-all. As much as Dame sees himself, and I think this is kind of just it snowballed so much after that initial podcast, whether it was in May or June, as Miami was going through their deep playoff run. There's enough there of a connection for Dame to want to play in Miami, to want to play with two defensive-minded players in Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo, to want to compete for a championship, to want to be a part of a team that was just in the NBA Finals. But I don't think it's necessarily the only option for Damian Lillard.
The other interesting one that I think would probably make him reconsider is if Daryl Morey were able to pull off some sort of deal where he sends enough out with Harden going to the Clippers, take whatever the Clippers were going to give and send that to Portland. You send out Tobias Harris, whatever he could get, like spare parts, just like pieces. Oh, hey, there's like a second round pick and a young guy that's got a little bit of upside. That kind of combination goes to Portland as well. Like that solves the Sixers' entire problem. Like as long as they've still got Maxey and PJ Tucker and whatever's left over because they lost Niang, you still would have Damian Lillard and Joel Embiid, and those two guys have a pretty good relationship.
For now, yeah.
That's like, yeah, right now. But like, that's like that to me is another one of those like kind of lurking dangers. But I do think that the Sixers are, I think, too leveraged against because of how the Harden thing has evolved. I don't think that they're going to be able to find enough in the market to pull it off. But that's another team I think that Dame would probably have to be like, okay, I can make this work.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I think they're a contending team. They've got the right personalities. I think that's what we're kind of overlooking in all this. I picked Miami. I want to play in Miami. Why does he want to play in Miami? One, again, bam. He wants to compete for a title. Can he win a title in Milwaukee if they don't wind up trading everything away? Yeah, absolutely. Can he do so in Philadelphia? Absolutely. Can he do so in Boston? Toronto? Toronto, that's a little bit more questionable. But either way, I don't think he's going to, as you said, force his way out, regardless of where he gets traded to.
Orlando is the funniest one that's popped up today.
That is not something I expected to see.
Yeah, I mean, look, Orlando's wanted a point guard. They were trying to get Fred VanVleet at the deadline last year. They were shopping. They tried to get another meeting with him this summer. They tried getting, who else was it that they were talking to? They talked to like every free agent point guard and trade option. Like they've
That's
tried
Schroeder.
Yeah, everybody, right? The idea would be Markelle Fultz is going to be up for an extension, and that situation is not copacetic. Fultz is still a younger, not young anymore. It's been a couple of years, but younger player, very incomplete, but still starting caliber. You package that. The Magic have their picks. The Magic have some more young guys on the bench. You put that together, and then like your starting lineup looks like Dame, Jalen Suggs, or Anthony Black, depending on who gets included in the deal, Franz Wagner, Paolo Banchero, and Wendell Carter Jr. And like, I think that's a really fun lineup, and I would be really excited to see that. And I think that several of those players are better than any player that Dame has played with in Portland outside of LaMarcus Aldridge. Like, I like that roster a lot. I looked this up. The average years of experience on that squad is 2.7 years. They average 2.7 years of experience. And this is one where I will let you go off, but I will get ahead of it and tell you this is the type of deal that would be irresponsible for Portland to do. They don't owe Dame to send him to the one singular team that has no assets. They do owe it to him to do better than trading him to a bunch of kiddos that are still learning how to play in the NBA.
Is that a better deal than whatever Toronto, Miami, or any other team that we've just talked about has on available to them?
Probably because of the picks. Like if Orlando offers them a pick 2 years from now, right? An unprotected first 2 years from now, like there's a non-zero chance that that's a lottery pick. There's a non-zero chance that's a top 10 lottery pick. There's a non-zero chance that's a top 5 lottery pick. Like there's a pretty good chance versus like all the picks that Miami's going to send. I'm just like, yeah, those are in the 20s. You give Adam Simon 4 years. Like you need to make sure that in 4 years, you don't give up a top 10 pick. No problem.
Yeah. I think Orlando's an up-and-coming team. They've got young players and everything else like that. I see that their future is bright in a way that maybe doesn't necessarily mean immediate title contention. But yeah, I do think, however, I don't think Portland cares about being irresponsible or not. They don't give a damn that they view that offer necessarily as better than whatever else they might be able to field. And I don't know that Orlando's willing to make that deal either. I mean, you said that they've been kind of kicking the tires or at least inquiring about getting a veteran point guard to kind of lead the team, and Dame certainly fits the bill. But I don't know how that Magic front office would sell that to their fan base as a guy who's probably going to be disgruntled, might half-ass it to some degree, even if it won't be public. He'll, probably shut himself down at some point if he winds up getting some kind of injury or something along those lines, or maybe even request a trade. Like he can't be like right now. Your Orlando fan base is so invested in the future. You got Wagner, you've got all these other young great players, Banchero, etc. And to have Lillard kind of send everybody ass up over tea kettle, I just don't know that necessarily is something that they would want to do. It just doesn't make enough sense for them to be taken as a serious contender. Plus, on top of all that, I think Lillard would absolutely say, no, get me the hell out of here. Send me 3.5 hours south to Miami. I do not want to be here.
On the other side, I do have kind of a point about all these other offers and the very specific market dynamics in play. We'll get back to that on the other side. Plus, I want to ask David if the Heat are going to be okay if they don't get Dame. We'll talk about that on the other side as we continue on Locked On NBA. Back here on Locked On NBA. Thanks for joining us on a Tuesday. Hope your day's going well. Hope this podcast is still up and that Damian Lillard has not been traded as we're recording this at 5:47 p.m. Eastern on Monday. We're just kind of waiting, David. Like David, and I'm totally with David. We're like, we're going to record because there's nothing else to talk about. We're not waiting on any sort of specific news. But yeah, I'm always like, oh God, what if he gets traded at 10 p.m.? Oh God, oh God, oh God. And their deals are always late too. I remember the Paul George deal was like at midnight.
That's right.
All right, so before I want to ask you about how the Heat are going to do, but I did want to kind of get to this point. One of the things I think with Orlando, and because you talked about like the value of the deal, like what's in the package, Orlando and Toronto and Philly and Milwaukee are all kind of the same. One of the key things in this is that we've argued, like there's been so much online conversation about the package that Miami has to offer.
Sure.
One of the things that's kind of in play here is that while there's tension against the other teams coming from the idea that the Goodwin Dame's agents have represented, which is that he's not going to report and he's going to be cranky and upset and he's going to curse at old ladies and he's going to leave his gum everywhere and all these terrible things, which no one believes. But on the other side is this. The package for Miami, even under the best circumstances, you can't be like, oh, yeah, that's a haul. Like, wow, they're going to get like great stuff. You could be like, that's a reasonable deal for a 34-year-old point guard with $40 million left on his contract, right, per year for 4 years. That like those two things are different. You can make the argument that the deal is reasonable, and I can disagree. But you can make that argument, and I could be like, that's a fair argument I disagree with, right? What you can't do is you can't be like, man, they're going to walk out with a haul. Portland is set. Like, that's not a thing. It may happen because David's guy, Nikola Jovic, may turn into like a 5-time All-Star. It's entirely possible. Or Jaime, right? Like, I'm not even kidding. Like, that is legitimately possible. Like, we've seen that stuff happen. Like, Marc Gasol was a Defensive Player of the Year winner, and he was a throw-in to the Pau Gasol deal. But because that package is so low, like Portland's not, all of those other teams know it. So like the Raptors are not trying to give them a haul. The Raptors are trying to be like, hey, we got Thaddeus Young, Chris Boucher, and some picks. You know, and like the Sixers are going to be like, well, no, I mean, not Tyrese Maxey, but you know, we'll give you, I don't even know. Like, here's DeAnthony Melton. DeAnthony Melton and Tobias Harris and some picks 5 years down the road. Milwaukee will try the same thing. Well, they'll try and include like, hey, we got Grayson Allen and some picks. Would you rather have Grayson Allen? And like that, eventually, if they get far enough, those teams may be like, okay, what if we include OG in this deal? Or OG goes to Phoenix and you get extra stuff from Phoenix or whatever, right? And Philly it's possible, unlikely, I think, very unlikely, but it's possible that Philly could be like, hey, here's Tyrese Maxey. But I think that's one of the dynamics to keep in mind is that these teams are not trying to get, these teams are interested not only because it's Damian Lillard, they're interested because it's Damian Lillard at a discounted price because of what the market is for his like most likely outcome, which is Miami. That's part of the equation here, which I think helps Miami's case, to be perfectly honest.
Do you still think it's Miami that's the most likely outcome?
Yes.
Even through all this, even as the front runner, Toronto Raptors, buzz in Milwaukee, Orlando, Chicago, Portland. I mean, sorry, not Portland, but Philadelphia, Miami still winds up getting Dame at some point.
I don't think that Toronto will ever come through. I think that they will be there until the very end, and they will continue to leave them on the edge the same way that they left the Pelicans and the Grizzlies on the edge with the OG talks of the deadline. I think at this point, you're going to have to show me that Masai Ujiri is actually willing to part with one of Scotty Barnes, Pascal Siakam, or OG Anunoby for me to believe. Like when the press release hits my inbox, David, I will believe it has happened. And then Milwaukee, they have so little to work with, like very little, and you risk upsetting your chemistry when you're still trying to manage the Giannis stuff. And like, it's a messy situation. And then Philly's kind of same deal. If they're not trading Maxey, I don't know where you're going to get to. They can all beat Miami's offer, but I don't think that they want to. I think they want to try and get this deal done as like, hey, look, you're going to get approximately the same you're going to get from Miami, but you don't have to give them the satisfaction. Like that's kind of part of the offer, which leads us to an interesting question that I wanted to ask you.
Yeah.
There's a confidence in the Miami circles of, like, the team's going to be fine. This team made the finals. And you're like, how'd they get there? And it doesn't matter. They made the finals. What did they finish the regular season with? No, they made the finals though. I have concerns given that I understand the feeling from Heat fans that like now all of a sudden Max Strus and Gabe Vincent are great players when they weren't great players 4 months ago. I understand that frustration. I like those guys. Like the shooting performance in the playoffs does not remove my evaluation of the talent, which is like I had Gabe Vincent as honestly like one of the best free agents on the market. Free agent market sucked, but that's why. Is like, oh, hey, he's like a reliable point guard that doesn't believe in chemtrails. That gives him a leg up over another marquee free agent point guard, right? So like all of these
significantly less, yeah.
Yeah. So like, but I am concerned that they have lost 2 rotation players, are replacing them with unproven guys. I think Haywood Highsmith can make a leap. I think Caleb Martin can grow on his Eastern Conference Finals position. But this is still a team that Bam and Jimmy have both missed a pretty significant amount of time. Kyle is definitely closer to the golf course than the basketball court at this point. Do you feel like Miami's going to be fine if this deal doesn't get done?
Yeah, they'll be fine. I don't think they'll be clear finals contenders, but they weren't that last year and still wind up again, as you said, through a combination of luck, injury to Tyler Hero and to others, Giannis Antetokounmpo notwithstanding, and then also, some hot shooting towards the end. They wind up making that finals run. I think they've kind of done the same thing that they've done over the last 4 seasons of Jimmy Butler's career, is that the timeline shifted so dramatically starting in 2019 when they got him, and they haven't been able to kind of catch up. It's just been very, very, they acquired Jimmy in 2019. Internally, they did not see that group with a rookie Tyler Hero, Bam Adebayo starting for the first time in his career, and everything else around him. They didn't view that team internally as a title contender. And then, well, the world fell apart, and Miami wound up going to the NBA Finals in the Orlando bubble and saying, well, you know what? Jimmy was even better than advertised. And now all of a sudden we have a championship window where one didn't exist. They moved all their chips into the pursuit of Giannis Antetokounmpo, only for that to fall apart and not have a necessary plan B. And they've been kind of just trying to catch up ever since. The second year of the Jimmy experiment, of course, that team was exhausted. They wound up getting swept by the Milwaukee Bucks. And so as of this point, they've kind of just done the same thing every year. It's like, can we get a superstar? No, we don't have the assets. Why? Because we've got 2 stars already on the roster. We made the push to acquire Kyle Lowry and PJ Tucker. They were going to be the missing pieces to help complement Jimmy and Bam. Those fell through. PJ was great, but he was only there for 1 year. Kyle has not been great. And I think they were very, very disappointed in his performance. So if you're asking me if they're going to be fine, yeah, they've been fine. They're going to be fine. They're not where they want to be. And I think that's pretty clear, which is why they're going after Dame, but also why they're not going to go crazy. There's not anything they can do that can go crazy. They haven't been as aggressive as other teams might be because there's nowhere else for them to go. It'd be pointless for them to be aggressive. They're going to pursue Dame. And if that falls apart, they're going to pursue Giannis. And if that falls apart, they're going to pursue Joel Embiid. And if they don't wind up winning a title during Jimmy's stint in Miami, well, so be it. Unfortunately, that's just the way it works out.
I think a lot of it has to be how much you feel like their chances are of, the play-in actually in some ways helps them, right? And that it has valued the regular season more so in some cases where it's like, you probably need to put your foot down so that you don't wind up in a situation where you have a bad shooting night and you're out, right? But I will say this, like, we've been doing this for a few years now, and like the 7 and 8s typically win. They tend to win, in part because home court is still a thing. So like you do have a little bit more of a but even then, like Miami could go on the road and win in the play-in tournament, so you do have a little bit more leeway. I do just kind of look at it as, if you told me that last year a team in the Eastern Conference is going to finish 8th and they're going to make a playoff run, Miami would have been one of the top teams I would have said. Okay. Like they're wired that way, right? They have such a huge coaching advantage. Like they have 2 massive advantages in they have a great playoff coach and regular season, but a great playoff coach and a great playoff best player. Like that combination is very rare. And so that sets them up well. At the same time, if you rerun the NBA season over 100 times, let alone 10,000, I don't know how many times Miami makes that run. And your odds of making it when you were the 1 seed are obviously just like a lot higher. You don't have to face as tough of teams. You don't have to take charges that wind up getting everyone hurt. Like, there are other ways for you to be able to make a run to the conference finals, and it's a little bit easier that way. So I wind up just kind of believing that I think, yes, Miami
Aside from Denver, who nobody can beat, aside from Denver, is there any one team that Miami can't beat in a 7-game series?
Now?
Yep.
Oof.
The answer is no, Matt. Like, I mean, this isn't homerism here. They've beaten everybody in the Eastern Conference at one point or another.
No.
Looking at you, Boston, they've beat many times. So I think it's just...
You beat them with Max Strus and Gabe Vincent.
Sorry. I know that was a point that you want to make and everybody does. I love Max and Gabe personally. 2 of the best guys to talk to in the locker room. I'm going to miss them because everybody else is a dead quote. You could get something good out of Gabe and Max. Having said that, they only chipped in because of Tyler Hero's injury, and that was not sustainable, nor is it something that you could bank on. You want to bring them back at a nice reduced price. That wasn't going to happen because the market, as you said, was crap, and you're going to overpay guys that aren't going to be, they're not going to be that great. Hopefully they work out in Los Angeles and Cleveland. I don't see it.
I'm going to let you have the last word on that one. Because I think it's a good point. All right, let's wrap it up for Locked On NBA. Thanks for joining us today. Appreciate you guys being with us. Make sure to tune in tomorrow for John Corrales and Jake Madison all throughout the week. You got Pat the Designer and Nick Angstadt on Thursdays, and on Friday, Wes Goldberg and Adam Mares. Make sure to go to and check us out on YouTube, youtube.com/LockedOnNBA. Appreciate you guys being with us. Have a great week, and we'll see you guys again next time on Locked On NBA.